Welcome to the Shine Freely podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Reeves. I host conversations with people who are authentic, bold, and kind. Through their life experience, ideas, and research, I'm learning how to shine freely. And in case anything I learn is useful for you, I want to share my experience along the way. Hi, Aslak.
Hi, Vicky.
Will you be so kind to read me one of those cards in front of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Okay, there. All right. So this is so the deck that I'm reading from is the Finnish tarot deck. So I'm just gonna, because I'm not sure. So this is a Pirituinen, which is like the Finnish version of the dung beetle in or the of the Egyptian lore. So they had the dung beetles as well.
Okay.
It looks like a skull, like the shape of the shape of the skull. So let me just find it real quick. All right. Luck with money and harvest, fortune, wealth, immortality, rebirth, blessing, success.
Wow.
Oh.
So this is going to get
right?
lucky with money, me or you or both.
Well, I mean, I would resonate more with success and rebirth.
Me too.
So maybe the money part is for you, and the rebirth and whatever is for you.
I'll take it.
Yeah, right? All right.
All right. Aslak, could you start by introducing yourself and tell us what you do professionally?
Sure. All right. So, where will I start? So professionally, I help people. So I've been working with bodies for like human bodies for almost a decade now, and even before that, I worked with myself. So I started with personal training, and then I went to massage therapy school, and after that, I've been going more deeper into this kind of realm of self-help / coaching / manual therapy / alternative healing modalities. And now I try to just say that I help people. I try to help people help themselves. I'm just
Beautiful.
somebody that's there to offer a service.
You're not the master.
No. I dropped that like a couple of years ago. I realized that it's almost like stepping into a ceremony with a client. It's everything is important and everything happens for a reason. And sometimes I don't even know what's actually happening. Like, obviously I know the techniques and whatever, but something that might arise from the client, I might be oblivious to it. But then when we open the conversation or we go into the body work, something beautiful happens or something chaotic happens. And both are beautiful,
actually. Why do you choose to focus on working with the body?
So the human body is, well, first of all, it's the car that we drive in this reincarnation or in this realm. So, I mean, we get only one. At the moment, let's see how technology and so forth is going to make us go forward, but we get only one. So, I mean, it's like an instrument. Like if you play a guitar, however good you're playing with the guitar, you have to tune it at some point. Same thing goes with any car, any instrument, anything that you have to take care of it. So I think that's I think in the center of our being, and it never lies. And it holds everything together. Without this, we would be just a thought form, or would we be even that? So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think it's the most valuable asset that we have to go forward in this life. So pretty short like that.
The statement, "It never lies," really strikes me. It really strikes me as true. And it's very surprising to me. I mean, until within the last year when I started using compassionate inquiry to notice what my own body was telling me, I never thought that the body could be so wise.
Right. And also, I don't think that the body is interchangeable with what we call the mind or with the soul, in the sense that they all work as a complex. So it's not like, oh, it's just the mind, or it's just the body, or it's just the soul. I think they work as a trinity in a sense. So that the body talks to the mind and the mind talks to the body. So that's where we get the placebo and nocebo effect, for example. The mind is so powerful that it can have dominion over the body. So you can make yourself sick, for example. And then there's the symbolic level where we can be the observer. Let's say I understood that you meditate, or you have been meditating. So you can understand the observer and then possibly the one behind the observer, right? So that's where the symbolic level comes in. So that, like, you don't necessarily know who you are, as in, like, you cannot grasp it with the small mind of a human being, but you can understand the symbolism. Let's say, for example, you get a wound somewhere, or you get bruised somewhere, or you get like stomach ache from something. There's symbology to that. Like, we have this saying, like, it boils my bladder, for example.
Wow.
Right?
Oh, that's such an unpleasant thought.
Yeah, but it's like rage and anger to its fullest, right?
Yeah.
But that's the symbolism of that. I think there has been deep wisdom with words before. I wouldn't say any particular year, but we have degraded our words also from that, and then we still have some of these sayings.
Yeah, it seems like at some point, I guess it probably goes hand in hand with somehow like the rise of science, which I think is a wonderful discipline and approach to understanding so many things about life. But science has a problematic feature in that it's like overly reliant on what you can measure. And it dismisses anything that you can't measure. And I think for me, this leads people to this assumption that like only what you can measure is real.
And that's where I'll go back to this where I said that the body is not interchangeable. I think the body is what I would call like a third dimension, in a sense that it's like the mind is in another dimension. That's not something like I can have thoughts, but I cannot measure, touch, or smell them, right? So it's in another dimension totally. And then we have if one would call it soul or spirit, it's on the other dimension, on next dimension or another dimension of that. So if we just live in the three-dimensional world, which is just which is based on our five senses, I don't perceive that to be living in the body. It's living in the senses, right? So it's even narrower than the fullest capacity of our bodies.
What is something that you have learned from your body that you would not have been able to measure?
I learned from my body. It speaks really loudly sometimes. Like,
how do you hear it?
I'm not sure if it's hearing. Well,
how do you
like we don't have the words.
How do you perceive what it's saying? Like, how do you translate its foreign language?
So let me just tell a little story about this loud voice or loud speaking of my body, where it comes from. So last summer, well, it has been before that, but I've been ignoring it to my fullest of my capacity, of course, because that's what we're taught. Don't listen to your things, listen to, whatever. So 2019, for example, I had within 1 month, my right calf tore halfway. So the soleus muscle, which is like the deeper muscle, and then there's two muscles in front, which actually makes the calf look good if you're a bodybuilder. So the other side tore halfway or ripped halfway. So I didn't listen to myself. And that's where the journey started. Towards listening to my body, not in a sense of, I don't personally perceive that pain is actually like being somatic or listening to my body. Pain is the result of not listening to my body. So when for example, professionally, when I have clients who say that they are acknowledging their body, or they are body conscious, and then they say, I know where the pains are. Well, that's already the mailman knocking down the door. Apart from acute pain, I perceive, or acute trauma, like let's say I bang my toe into in like a cabinet door or something. Apart from that, no pain comes like this. There has already been hints that there's going to be something happening. So coming back to my calf, I didn't listen. So first time I tore it, I was dancing. I was living this kind of lifestyle that I was waking up, like I was going to work or training at 7, and I was doing clients, and then I was training and doing clients, and weekends I was partying and whatever. And it just stopped me because I couldn't work out anymore, obviously. Well, I could, but it would just get worse. So I didn't listen. I was just running everywhere, running. And then my body says, hey, stop. And that was the only thing that could stop me to tear my calf.
And did you stop?
Yes, after the third one, yeah.
Third one.
Yeah. But it was funny. So I was dancing, like I like to listen to electronic music. I was dancing, I was jumping around and everything, and it was a party night, and so that was the first one. And I was jumping, and I was already warmed up. I was sweating like crazy, and it was just one song. I was really in the mood, and so like 1, 2, and I just felt like a tore. It's like, oh, it wasn't actually that bad. I like, if I remember it right now, obviously I couldn't walk well, but it wasn't like, the pain wasn't that bad that if you would think of muscles tearing apart from their attachment point, it wasn't that bad. Like my nose has been broken once, and that was worse. Anyway, a week from that, I still continued training and going to work and blah blah blah. A week from that, it was better, or so I perceived it was better, and I again went dancing, and I started jumping, and it was like even worse. Like I was in a festival, and that was the worst thing. I had to take my stuff, and the car was in the other side of the festival area, and it was just horrible. So I came back from the festival, still doing work and yada yada yada, and then I was just walking on the sideway, and there was this drop from the sidewalk to where I was crossing the road, and I wasn't cognizant of that drop. It was more than I anticipated, and it just broke me. I was like, I could just walk anymore. Crazy. And yeah, that stopped me, and that really took me to a place where I started to listen to my body. And I actually had to stop working out because I wasn't listening to my body when I was working out. It was just how many sets I can do. Am I getting progressively better at everything? Am I doing so? It was almost like dog training. You know, I want this dog to do this, and it will do this when I say it has to do this. So I had to stop training. I'm still like recovering from that like 4 years ago, in a sense that I haven't really gone back to the gym because I'm not sure if that's what I want to do, because there is this kind of place where I might, like, I've been going back a couple of times, but I haven't found the routine where I don't feel like I'm trying to push myself, even though I would like to do squats and heavy deadlifts and all the good stuff. But I remember the first time I went back, I was just like, oh, this actually feels too good. Like it was really tasty. Like it was sweet, like really sweet to go back there the first time. I was like, oh, this feels like addiction right now.
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Okay, I'm really fascinated by this whole concept of like pushing oneself, especially physically.
Yeah.
But even not physically, even just pushing oneself to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really curious, I'm really curious in your perspective as a man and as someone who's, been a personal trainer and someone who works with the body.
Mm-hmm.
My experience of pushing myself is that it's never good, ever. Like it never feels good. It never gets the results that I'm looking for. And I'm inclined to avoid. I'm not inclined to do things that make me uncomfortable. I do that every day. But I'm inclined to avoid
just waking up is uncomfortable. Just kidding.
I'm inclined to avoid being forceful with myself, actually. And I don't think that it would be healthy for me to force myself to do anything. And yet, at the same time, I think that there's something about discipline that is healthy that I haven't understood yet about life. And I'm trying to find, what is the difference between, healthy discipline and forcing oneself to do things?
Well, you just said it. Discipline and forcing. It's like discipline is like, let's say you eat healthy, for example, but binge eating, for example, which is forced eating, right? I don't feel like it, but that donut looks very good.
Okay, but let's say it was something like exercise. I don't.
Mechanism. I mean, in a sense, it's the same thing. Can I just put a pin in this and let's continue with that?
Sorry.
I was gonna tell the story of I still told the story of my calf, but there's also a story to do with ayahuasca when I was in Colombia, and that's where it just clicked, like really clicked. So if it's okay with you to hear that story. So
yeah,
I was in Colombia. It was the second night or the first night, maybe the first night. And what I got from that, I was, you could call it whatever, but I was hearing this voice in my head, and we were talking. We were actually having a conversation, there wasn't like there's a higher and a lower. We were equal. And we were having this conversation with this entity, and I would say she at the moment, but it's an it. I don't perceive that it had a gender in a sense, but it felt more feminine. And she was just showing me and telling me these things of, how babies are, when they have a boo-boo or they have something that aches, they cry, or they're like, oh, wrist hurts, or there's a poop in my pants. That's the level of conversation that we have with our bodies, because we haven't being taught the language of our bodies,
Mm.
which is, first of all, symbolic, where it tells the object. And then there's the direct, you did something wrong, now it hurts. But we don't evolve the dialogue with our bodies. We don't converse with our bodies. So it's like a car. Like I have a car, and I should wash that car. I haven't done that in a couple of weeks, and I've been thinking I should take that for a wash. Why? Because I treat it as something that I use, not something that's like equal to me.
Mm.
So we had that conversation with that entity, and like, not to toot my own horn here, but it was just funny that it said to me all the time, "But you know this, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think I do." And it was just like, it was just, and it was so blessing to have that confirmation that actually the knowledge is already there. You just have to listen.
That's a really beautiful statement. And it really resonates with me in terms of like everything that I've ever discovered to be true, without exception, when I discover it, it feels like a very old friend that was there all along.
There's a beautiful saying from Michael Singer, and he says something like this. I might be paraphrasing here, but he says that God is always here. We just have to remove the blocks to God. Now, it doesn't have to be a religious God. It can be the universe, the whatever, the great mystery, just put your own belief system there.
So how does one learn to begin conversing with their own body?
Well, I think it's the same thing also regarding like conversing with their soul. It's try to do something that's not actually like there's no ego there. Like if you're attached to something, like, oh, I'm attached to going to the gym, or this yoga practice is, this is my everything, and you have created a story or a tower around it. That might be something that that might be something that might trigger your ego, right? So I wouldn't start from there. But it's basically simple. It's just, if you can meditate, you can hear your body. Like, or then there's like this like muscle testing, for example, or if you can stand up, there's a stand-up test where you, for example, you can hold a piece of food in your hand and take it close to your body and ask your body, is this good for me? And it will either, if you don't go limp in the sense that you fall to the ground, but you can ask your body, is this good for me? And just close your eyes if you want, and just listen and relax to it. And your body will either lean forward, like it's going forward, or then it goes backwards, like you start to lean backward. Very simple. Or then they can do the muscle testing. It make like a duck bill, is it? Like the yeah, right? And then you can ask your body, like you can do it with me right now if you want to. So you apply like minimal pressure, right? So you don't press it like consciously. You just put your fingers like so, that you have your 4 fingers up top and your thumb in the bottom, and then like that, whack, 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 whack. And you ask yourself, what does a yes feel like? And your body will tell. Like you put your consciousness in your hand. What does yes feel like? And there's a reaction in your hand. And then I usually shake my hand because I don't want this to, giving big signals, because it's also a conscious process. So you can. It's like if you ever done pendulum, like
I have not.
Yeah, so it's like you can use your mind to move the pendulum. All right, so duck bill, right, like this, and then you ask your body, what does no feel? And there's a difference, at least for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I love that you use an exercise too, because I think that with a lot of this stuff, basically anything that you can't measure, even though actually in that example that you just showed, I think that you could probably pretty easily measure the response. But even so, it can sound quite, hocus pocus to people or whatever.
Hmm.
And that's fine. Like people can have that reaction. But I always think when people have that reaction, it's like, well, why don't you just try it? Like either just ignore it and care nothing about it, or just try it to see if if you discover something.
Well,
but when people have an aversion to even like considering something being possible, that's very interesting.
Yeah, well, I guess it has to do something with breaking their reality. Like there's a reason why I'm my own universe in the sense that everything that I see, experience is uniquely mine. Like nobody else can experience that ever. Not now, not before, and not in the future. And that's why I'm my own universe. And somebody's universe might be this small. Like, you have 100 meters to your workplace, you go to the gym, another 100 meters, and you walk your dog in a circle of maybe 2 kilometers. And you go to one place every year to have your vacation, and you listen to the same radio station, the same news, the same outlet that give you the same flavor of information, because it's the same, right? Like if you are, let's say, conservative and you listen to conservative news or whatever, you get the same flavor of that, which is the topic might be different, but it's from the same lens, so the flavor is the same. Like it doesn't matter the brand, but if the ice cream is chocolate, it's freaking chocolate, right? So that breaks somebody. It's like if you give the chocolate analogy. So if you would say, bring the chocolate, I would know that you like chocolate ice cream, and that's everything. Only thing that you eat is chocolate ice cream. Now I come with, hazelnut caramel, yum yum yum. You would probably get mad, right? If fuck you for not bringing me chocolate ice cream, right? And that kind of destroys their worldview, and that's where it's easier to say that, that's hocus pocus, that's mumbo jumbo, that's woo, because then I shut it in the box of I don't have to actually understand that, and I don't have to actually engage with that, because that is too big for my worldview at the moment.
Which is also fine. Like I really respect and even encourage people to be clear with themselves around what they want to explore and what they don't, and where their boundaries are. And
most definitely, most definitely. But then again, I personally perceive that that's something that would be beneficial to word out. Like if I say, this is too much for me, that's a boundary. But if you bring me that something ice cream that's not aligned with my worldview, and I attack you for that, or I blame you for that, or I do something that's what's the word that I'm looking for here? Well, I will use the word attack. Somebody might use something else, but if I blame it on you because I haven't worried out that, hey, I only eat chocolate ice cream, then where's the blame at? And then I think this ties into most of modern psychology right now is, and also we talked about coaching, is like there's like, it doesn't matter how well somebody coaches you if you don't do jack shit, or if you go to therapy, and this ties into the conversation we had before we started recording. If you go to therapy for somebody else to help, somebody else to do the work for you, like if there's not personal responsibility, I think that's something where we go, that's why we fight, for example, right now. Like, that's why I think the world is in chaos right now. There's no personal responsibility. My problem and my hurt is your fault, and you're responsible of keeping me in a tight box.
I totally agree. I also think it's really important, at least for me, to be really clear about the difference between responsibility and blame.
Yes.
I have noticed that I have a mind which kind of defaults to assigning blame for everything that happens. It's like it's either their fault or my fault or his fault or her fault or my fault. And most of the time, I'm going to go ahead and default to it's my fault. Like everything is my fault. I screwed up. I'm the worst. Blah, blah, blah. And that is also a trap. And I think I spent a lot of time in my life thinking that I was taking responsibility for my own shit by blaming myself for everything. And I don't think that blame has anything to do with responsibility.
Yeah, this is going to tie well together. Let's end this conversation, then go to the forceful and discipline thing afterwards. Okay? Because this ties very good into that. So what you said was blaming yourself. You are still blaming somebody, right? It doesn't matter if it's...
Yes.
Because, again, this goes into the place where you have the observer. If the observer is blaming, it doesn't matter if it blames, the janitor, the car dealer, the clerk in the shop, myself. Like, Aslak, you're doing stupid shit. Like, you are the one to blame. How about we change the word blame? This happens, and now I'm responsible. And that ties into this kind of self... What's the word? Self-actualizing and also self-responsibility. Because only in that place you can actually take responsibility. If you're blaming, you're like, oh, you're so shit, you're so this, you're so that. I think our brain perceives that as doing. The same thing is with complaining.
Our brain perceives what as doing?
Blaming or complaining. I think they are quite similar.
Yeah.
Like complaining, it's like, oh, my boss was this, or I don't like this job, or I don't blah 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 blah. And now I'm doing stuff, but I'm not actually doing anything. Like nothing changes. I'm just keeping myself busy by pointing the finger, or oh, now I feel good about myself because I could tell my coworkers how shitty my boss was, without actually doing anything.
One of my favorite
issues.
One of my favorite things that Gabor Mate said was his definition of what it means to take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically just breaks the word apart, responsibility.
Yeah.
And he defines it as the ability to respond in the present moment.
Yes.
And I suppose when I'm responding in the present moment to whatever's happening, there's no... Like all of these emotions that arise from a perceived disconnect between the self and others, or between the self and the self, actually, which is an interesting topic that I haven't really said a lot about out loud. But all of those emotions, like blame and anger and sadness and whatever else, none of those emotions are present for me when I am responding in the present moment, to the present moment.
Even sadness? Or grief? Or grief? Or grief? Have you ever lost loved one, for example?
Yes. And when maybe the words pain and suffering are helpful here. It's like I can experience pain at the present moment, But when I am experiencing suffering, it's always a reaction to my perception of the past or the future. It's never responding to the present moment.
Sure. How do you define the difference between pain and suffering?
Actually, I would like to ask you that question because you had a great answer one time. And I want to hear it again.
Yeah, now it's recorded, so you can listen it to again. So pain is temporary, and also we release pain. Like, thank you. Like if you stump your foot somewhere, thank you for this, with maybe some cursing, and then suffering is talking about it the next week. Oh, it still hurts. Oh my God. And I think suffering is closer to a mental process because we create suffering. Oh, this, work is something, or oh, this apartment building and the neighbors that, and, work stuff and whatever. And we're just creating suffering. And that's where I think the definition of hell comes in. Hell on earth is like if you are constantly in suffering. I mean, isn't that definition of hell, right?
Yeah.
Not as in the Christian hell, but like, I don't know. It's not very healthy place to be suffering, like mental pain at all times. And also, one thing I want to add there is that I believe also chronic pains or chronic ailments to be suffering, which ties back into this. The body is not separate from the mind and so forth. And your mind can poison your body. It's like if you have actual deep hate towards yourself, for example, you might inflict some chronic or Western disease for yourself.
Yeah, that becomes
cancer, for example.
I'm just breathing because this is a topic where I feel like I want to make sure that I'm only speaking to what I've experienced directly, because I've never had cancer, and I don't. There's so many things that it's just like I have no idea what that's like. The first thing I want to say is that I'm also noticing that for me, I think suffering is resistance to pain. I've noticed that in moments when I am somehow able to just let go of any resistance and just accept whatever is arising in the present moment, I don't experience suffering. Like, no matter how sad the thing is that it's arising, no matter how painful the feeling is in my body, if I can stop resisting it, if I can just allow it to be, I don't suffer anymore. And I feel like the last few months, I was just telling you how my summer's been, I've been feeling a lot of fire inside of my body. And the whole time I feel like I'm just fighting my pain, like resisting it so much. I'm trying so hard not to feel this pain. And it was brutal. It was like there's a war going on inside of me. Like one part is like trying really hard not to feel this pain. And then it created a lot of suffering, just the resistance itself. Now, I'm trying to connect the dots in my brain for a minute around how this relates to the connection between force and discipline.
For example, I sometimes have lower back pain. And it usually gets worse when I stress about things. And if I'm good, it's good. And if I force myself to, let's say, go somewhere where I get manipulated by force, it gets worse. So if it's not aligned with the pain, for example, like I don't force myself. Like if I do morning yoga, all right, this asana is good for me and this is good for me this far. But if I go further, it aggravates it. I'm not going to force myself. And then the discipline comes in. It's like, I saw this good video in I don't remember the the Instagram user, but he said something like, it's still progress. Like, he had this video of like he was acting the both sides, and there was like this guy, I don't. So the scene was so that he was saying that I don't have time to eat, and and then he threw himself an apple from, as another character. And he catched it and ate it, and he was like, it's still progress. So it goes forward. So you have discipline that you show up for yourself. Like it's the same thing when I was a personal trainer. Like if I had a client who wanted to lose weight, if they were obese, and I said to them, don't try to overdo things. Just put your shoes on and see how that feels, like running shoes or walking shoes.
What I hear you saying is that discipline is showing up for yourself.
Yeah, it's like you are on your side, right? And forceful is like you're
on the other side.
Yeah.
That's so well said. I like it.
Yeah.
So how does one, if someone is wanting to develop more physical discipline, take care of their body, how does one work with their relationship to their self to help them develop the discipline of taking care of their body?
Well, that's a large topic, but let me just try to go in for that. I'm just going to say I'm a little bit distracted. There's a wasp here, so I hope it doesn't sting me. It hurts.
Oh man, I got stung by a wasp on my knee, as I told you the other day, and I measured this swelling. It was 13 inches of swelling.
What?
This wasp sting. Yeah,
really?
Joke. My daughter saw it. She's like, "Ooh, Mom, I think you need to go to the doctor."
No problem. So going back to your question, what is the best thing? So first of all, I think Charles Poliquin had a good, God rest his soul, had a good article, like a blog post about this, and he says it was something on the lines that motivation is the myth of motivation. He talked about something that you love. So, like, let's say if you love the taste of donuts and laying on the couch more than you love, let's say, a functioning body, it's not your fault if you love something more than you love the other thing. Now, if you can flip that, like, let's say, for example, everybody doesn't like to go to the gym. There's multiple reasons why not to go to the gym. Like, as an individual, let's say you're embarrassed, you don't know where to start, yada yada. Maybe gym is not your thing. Maybe you like to walk, and maybe you have a friend who also likes to walk. Maybe you find that as a discipline to go in to taking care of your body. Or if you love to cook or explore new recipes, maybe instead of doing, mac attack with mac and cheese and, whatever, you may try to do something more healthier for yourself. And that's just the entry point. And I think this is like, the analogy of the onion, that you peel the layers and there's always a layer to peel. I think that's it. Like personally, like when I got to the gym, I was in my early 20s. Yeah, I was 20 and I went to the gym the first year, no clue what to do. Nothing. I just went there and I just, did stupid shit in the sense of like, I didn't know what to do. So I hired a personal trainer for 2 years. For the second year and the third year. And that was something that I enjoyed to do afterwards because I knew what to do. And I think you just have to find something that you like to do or love to do. If it's swimming, great. If it's dancing, great. If it's jogging, running, of course you have to take your physiology to consideration. Let's say if you were, according to your BMI, normal size, whatever normal means, but you were
Dangerous word.
yeah, you were overweight or obese. Let's say you run in your teens, you ran a lot. Like let's say you do track and field, for example, and now 2 decades later, you find yourself being obese or morbidly obese. Probably running is not your thing at that point, but maybe someday. So maybe you'll find something more suited for your physiology, like swing, for example, is a good thing because you're in an almost gravity doesn't exist in water in the same way that in running it does. So it's easier for your knees, or cycling maybe, or whatever. So I think it's just finding something that you like to do for now.
Which involves listening to your body to notice what your body likes to do.
Yeah, but it also can be a mind's process. It's like, let's say I like cake, for example. Can I make cake healthier? Possibly, right? And it's a mental process in the sense that, okay, this is healthier to use less sugar, for example. Like if the recipe says that put a kilo of sugar, maybe start with half a kilo of sugar, and maybe next time you make the same cake, maybe quarter of a kilo of sugar, and go from there, right? So there's also steps, because if you're, I would presume that if one is obese, for example, like if that's or traumatized in the sense, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be obese. Traumatized in the sense that you don't know how to listen to your body. It has to come from the mind, and that's where you just trial and error, right? It's like, when kids have the block things where they put like different shapes in different holes.
Mm-hmm.
First, they try, the wrong things because they're trying to do it from the mind, in a sense. Like, oh, I'm not sure if this goes there, but I'm trying to put a square from a triangle. Doesn't work. And then it's just like they just try to do that, and then at some point it just clicks. Oh, I actually like dancing, or oh, I actually like swimming more than I thought I would. But to try new things.
One of the things that's jumping out to me about what you're saying is the aspect of patience. And I think of patience as the opposite of resistance, or the lack of resistance, perhaps the absence of resistance. And I've always been the kind of person that wants the results right now. I don't want them later. I want them right now.
Preferably a week earlier, right?
Yeah. And I'm slowly becoming more patient. And when I say more patient, what I really mean by that is I'm slowly developing my own capacity to accept things as they are, and to accept myself as I am in this moment, and to accept whatever amount of progress I've made or haven't made in this moment. And I've I think limited myself so many times in so many ways because I couldn't accept where I was in my process. I just always wanted to be at the finish line already. And then I would beat myself up for not being at the finish line already. And then I would want to give up because it's like, oh, well, what's the point in doing this if I'm not at the finish line already? Which reminds me of the conversation we're having about therapy and what the whole use of therapy is or can be.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing is what you're saying is like you are, there's also, I think, a focus part in the sense like if you're like what I said about my gym career in the sense of going to the gym and wanting to lift weights or whatever. So my forceful goal, so my focus was forcefully on the progress, not in the process. Love what you do, right?
Well said.
More than it's like it's like I just heard a good quote a couple of days ago, and it was like it was in the form of question, but it's like, who walks more, the one who's focused on the destination, or the one who loves to walk? right?
Oh, that's a really good one.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was I think it was in the podcast, and they were joking around about every quote is from Winston Churchill or somebody else. Like it was just they were joking around it. They had this quote. I don't remember who it was, and it was like, well, probably Winston Churchill. or
I also the way I relate to the concept of patience has changed so much, because I used to really think about it as being connected to time, and like patience meant having the ability to wait or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know, I haven't really thought about it in that way in a long time. I don't even really know, like, what does patience have anything to do with time? Because I feel like patience is simply not resisting whatever's arising. And I think maybe we attach ourselves, or at least I'll speak for myself, previously would attach myself to this concept of patience having to do with time, because everything that arises is impermanent. It's going to change. It's going to disappear. And therefore, if we just wait, we can rest easy that whatever this thing is that's appearing that we want to resist will eventually just dissolve and disappear. Which I think is true, but I think it's like it's a very avoidant approach to life. And avoidance is basically lacking patience.
Yeah, it could be that as well. I think I'm just like curious on thinking, like my mind goes to this place where I'm thinking of like past, present, and future in a sense. Like patience is presence, right? Whatever happens. I'm not. An outcome is future, and past is something else, right? I'm not sure where I can connect this one, but if we're attached to the outcome, we're attached to the future. And if we're present, it's like, it's okay. I'm doing my best, so I'm living in the process of doing stuff. So imagine like a child starting to walk. Like I have been impatient in my life, so in a place where if I would go to my childhood with that impatience, I probably wouldn't, learn to walk. But a child doesn't think it like that. It's like, oh, I want to be like the adults, and I want to walk with two legs or two limbs, and that's just it. Or they don't think in the sense that we are thinking. Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't remember, but I think that's something to consider. Is like if you adapt the mind of, well, this is new to me, then there's just presence there. And I think presence is one of the many forms of love, for example.
Say more about that.
So, at least for me, it's like it ties in together with my work, for example. It's just like when I'm present to the other person, I can catch what they're saying or catch what they're doing if I'm present. Obviously, I need to be present to myself as well. Like if I start to wiggle around when a person tells me their story, and then I'm present to the other person, that's like, going like this and shaking my head or something, doesn't work. But if I'm present to myself and present to the other person, I'm in a self giving my presence to them. So it's a present, right? It's a gift. It's love. And from that place, whatever arises, it's the gift. So like in CI, for example, like inquiry work in general, if you just let arise what rise, that's it.
That's it.
That's it. And that's the truth.
So I'm just thinking about myself this past week in our compassionate inquiry class, and how desperately I was really wanting to make sense of everything and just understand it, how it all fit together, and I just couldn't. I just don't get it. I don't think I ever will. Whatever. And I want to be able to explain how and why, if you just allow whatever to arise, then healing is somehow the natural result. And I can't explain that, but I experience it all the time.
Well, you know the art of when they're doing in Japan they have this art where if you break, like, let's say a porcelain mug or something, and they glue it with gold flakes, or I'm not sure how it, or something to do with gold. It's king something, king is gold. So to make it, to show their scars, so the porcelain mug would have, let's say, shattered into 5 pieces, and you glue it together with golden glue. So you see the imperfection, which is actually perfection.
Mm.
So going back to this place where we are actually whole, even though we're broken, right? So it's like if you're, let's say, what I'm hearing what you said about CI, it's like there's this, and also I've understood with some other peers of ours that there's also like, and also I have had that, and probably sometimes still do. The focus is so much on the technique or doing something right, which implies that there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's, if you look at holistically, you have always the complement opposite of something. If you're just focused on the other 50%, you miss the other 50%.
Now that we've been,
when you're present, you're present to the 100%, which is me and you in this conversation, or if there's an issue that we're talking about, there's both sides, and then you just, okay, what sounds like has more weight to it, if it's a conversation, like a therapeutic setting conversation, or if like somebody talks to me, or if I talk to somebody who's present to me, they might catch something that I'm not catching because I'm focusing on the pain aspect of something, and they're like, well, how about this side? Or like implying that I have to do something right implies that there's something wrong. So if I'm focusing on how I have to do something right, I'm not focusing on what's wrong, and there's actually nothing wrong. But if I'm perceiving that something wrong, there's a problem.
So now that we're talking about compassionate inquiry, which we've been studying together last year,
yes,
I would love to hear what led you to study compassionate inquiry.
So I discovered Gabor Mate in, I think it was through Tim Ferriss' podcast. Shout out to Tim. Woo!
That's cool. I didn't know he was on Tim Ferriss' podcast.
He has been twice. So it was the first episode he was in. I was actually recently listening to it. I listened to that podcast for maybe 10 plus times. And I always get something new out of it, because it's like the starting point for me to go towards Gabor. And it was something maybe 2017, 18, possibly. And so those who want to listen to that episode, it's 298 episode of Tim Ferriss podcast.
Nice memory.
Yeah. And well, I listened to it like a week ago. So yeah. So I was listening to that, and I was like, this makes sense. And I was,
what made sense?
What he was talking about in the podcast, the Gabor was talking about. I was like, this makes sense. And I found a place where I could be more compassionate towards myself. I was struggling in my late teens, in my early 20s, with jealousy. I just couldn't have the place to find what's wrong with me, and I was almost like separate from that issue because it was so huge. And then through that episode, I just started to discover like an aha moment. Just, it was just there, and I was really amazed how quickly it started to not heal but show itself, to be present to that aspect of myself. And I found my issues with my father. In like, I obviously knew that I had some issues with my father, but I could connect that towards that. So like, let's go to a little side quest here. So I personally don't perceive jealousy as an emotion. Like people say, oh, I'm jealous about that person. Well, actually, it's like, for me, at least for me, it was fear and anger. I was afraid that I would be dumped, left, whatever, and I was angry for that person to try to do that, even though, they didn't. And I found myself as a small boy looking at my father and not physically, but as a small boy, just seeing my father walk away from our family.
Mm.
It was just powerful. Even now I get some goosebumps because it's like, I was so angry at him for leaving me. And I could actually experience that anger. And I found myself also sad and afraid. And I applied that to many of my relationships. So that's where I found Gabor. Now, fast forward a couple of years, I did a little mushroom ceremony in my apartment at the moment. And I was doing already body work. At that point, I was doing massage therapy. And I believe I was still doing personal training. And I was in my apartment alone, laying on my floor. I was moving my back, and I already had this little pain that arises that I mentioned earlier. And I was just shaking, like wiggling my pelvis around so that I could feel like a small spot of pain there. I was like, what am I holding on to? What's the pain here? Even though it was like, in a scale of 1 to 10, it was like 1.5. I was still like, what am I holding on to? What's here? And then it's just like opened up this kind of visual place where there's the human body, and then there's the mind, or like the perceived mind, and my place is in the middle. And I immediately knew, okay, now that I've done the massage therapy school and I'm working there, I will start to shift towards Gabor, or compassionate inquiry. It was like, I think it was the first thing I Googled, was because I've heard that he was doing the course, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I Googled it, and I was like, oh, I haven't been doing enough of, I thought massage therapy would be, I understood now that it's also, if you're a personal trainer, you could do compassionate inquiry or a coach. So that was something I was striving towards. I was doing my work, and then I thought that now the time is ripe, and then I applied to the course.
What has surprised you as you've been learning and practicing compassionate inquiry?
As in myself, or with clients, or both?
Both.
So at this stage, I noticed myself sometimes slipping out of the bodily experience. So maybe that's something that's in both sides also. It's like, how is it possible that we live in human body, or we perceive ourselves through this human body, and we still aren't present to that, as myself and also with clients? And
so it's surprised you to observe how disconnected we are from our own bodies.
Yes, and also I'm also amused about the explanations of what I have given, and also people around me have given, like how they are in their body, and yada yada yada. And then like 2 questions later, it's like, oh, so the reason why I'm saying this is I would like to distinguish between experiencing pain and then being in the body. Those are totally two different things. I think so.
Experiencing pain and being in the body are two different things.
Yes. Because most of the people say, at least here in my peer groups or with my clients, it's like, oh, I am body conscious, or I'm aware of my body. I know where the pains are. And it's like, well, that's not it. That's like, because that, like, you're already late. Like, in a sense, there's a rock in the shoe already. Like, you notice that, oh, I have, like, do you notice your legs when you walk, for example?
No.
Right? Where are your feet when you walk? But if you have a stone in your shoe, you are going to notice it. But still, do you experience your legs, for example, or your knees, or your thighs, or your calves, or your shins? No, right?
Correct. I do not.
Yeah, but then there's this little pebble that creates at least that amount of pain that you're aware of it or uncomfortable with it. Not always that you take the stone out of the shoe, but at least that you notice that it's uncomfortable. And maybe you wiggle your leg so that it goes into the soft spot that doesn't hurt that much.
Do you remember anything specific from this Tim Ferriss podcast that jumped out at you that was like really the light bulb went off?
Gabor has a CI moment with Tim. Like, it's not a full session, but there's this, like, he gives this example where Tim has something to do with his house, and the renovations haven't been done when he was away, and he came back and the shit wasn't still done. And now what does he experience? And then Gabor gives him maybe 2 or 3, and also Tim has 2 or 3 other possibilities that might have been there, but he jumps straight into this kind of that he's not worth it, and he did it on purpose, that he left, the job undone. So that was a big one. Also, like, going back to the jealousy, like, if it's always like the first reaction is anger, why the anger? Like, it should be an alarm clock for you to wake up. What's happening? If you react always the same way.
For whatever reason, what that story is making me think of is how surprising it has been for me. In the compassionate inquiry method, we one of the things we focus on is identifying subconscious beliefs or core beliefs that are impacting the way we perceive ourselves in the world. And what's been interesting for me is that I think there's part of me that, like, wants that to be the finish line. That, like, once you've identified your subconscious belief, that's your filter that you're seeing the world through, like, then you could just, uproot it and problem solved. You've got the medicine you need and you're on your way. And it doesn't work, at least in my case, it doesn't work. Like, the intellectual understanding of where our suffering is coming from is not enough to overcome it. And what I think experienced for the first time with the compassionate inquiry method is that combining that intellectual understanding with a direct felt experience in the body, only then does, like, this space and freedom appear. Like, does the release happen?
Well, that's where I think my unpopular opinion of why therapy doesn't work comes in. I just have to throw it out there. That's true. What you said it's very true. It gives space, but where does it fall back to? Where, if let's say you have 20 years, 30 years, whatever years you have doing habitually something, Now let's say you go to a retreat and you get, a aha moment or, an actualization of something, but you go back to your habitual space with your habitual life with this 20, 30, whatever years of habitual doing something. Where does that?
In my body.
Okay, but let's be realistic. I'm gonna give you I'm gonna give you this analogy. Let's say you watch a documentary, good documentary about something very interesting, right? But you imply zero of that documentary, but you still think that's the best documentary I've ever seen. Where does that occur? Like in your physical world, right? If your habits don't change, if your actions don't change, right? Where does it land? And that's the problem. What I have is like, if there's no integration into your life, like let's say, I give this example most of the time when I explain this. It's like if let's say you go to an ayahuasca retreat, or whatever, and you get this blissful moment where now I love myself and I don't have to smoke anymore, and the issue is smoking cigarettes, right? Now you go back to your life, which is outside of that ceremony, and you have friends who smoke. You go to the bar where you can smoke, and your life is rotated so that you get only breaks that you get from work is by smoking. But now you accept that smoking is okay and I don't have to do that. But you're in the habitat of smoking all the time. Now, chances are you go back to smoking.
Yeah.
Right? So if there's no action accompanying that aha moment or that bodily access experience, it's pretty hard, right? And the older we get, the more we accumulate those habitual things. And that's why I think therapy in itself doesn't work, especially like I'm listening to you, how do you feel therapy?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I haven't studied therapy extensively. I mean, I've studied what we do in compassionate inquiry, and I have a degree in psychology, but I haven't trained as a therapist. And so I don't want to presume that I know what kind of training therapists get. And I've had some terrible experiences with a few therapists. But what really appeals to me about coaching is that it's so focused on this integration aspect and so focused on taking like actionable steps to integrate whatever it is that you're discovering through the exploration of your own emotions.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is like if that aspect, which I would call a masculine aspect, which is doing, is not there, then it doesn't land anywhere. And also we can have the psychological aspect where we can read about everything. Well, in the capacity of our human lives, but let's say study something for years, but never apply it. It's just knowledge. It doesn't turn into wisdom. Oh, now I understand the screw goes this way. If like if you never screw any nuts or bolts anywhere, but you're just reading the book, so it turns clockwise and it looks like this and it's this big and whatever, you might be the smartest person intellectually to do that, but if you don't have direct experience, like I'm not sure if it works.
Yeah.
And that's where it can get lost. It's like lost in the mind of, I need to understand more about this. Well, maybe you'll just have to do the physical thing that it is that you want to do to experience that. And maybe that what you have been reading doesn't apply to you at all because you don't like to do, let's say, car repair, but you have learned everything about cars. But then you go there, I don't like the smell of the gasoline, I don't like this or that. And then you're like, maybe if I would have, started by also putting myself in a place where I can do the physical stuff, maybe I realized maybe this is not my thing, and I would have saved a lot of time for myself.
Likewise, I really appreciate that you, well, whatever, for you relate to this as a masculine aspect. I do too, that doing is the masculine aspect and being is the feminine aspect in my mind.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't matter. I just use these words. It doesn't matter. You can say whatever. It's just doing and being.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or experiencing and whatever.
And the same account, like if people focus only on doing, which I think the world is a little bit like inclined to do these days, particularly in the US. I mean, I think it's a global phenomenon, but here for sure, the culture is so strongly like do. Don't ever stop doing. And it's like that's how you achieve things. And that can become just as problematic and distracting and like counterproductive.
Yes, most definitely. And I think there's a thing if also to have the downtime, or let's say reading, for example, is like if you don't give new input for yourself, even if you, let's say, having the aha moment or the experiencing the bodily experience of, let's say, in CI session. Now, if you don't have nothing to fall back on, let's maybe, like if it's like, oh, now I just have to do some exercise, for example, or move my body, but I don't know nothing about moving my body except for going to the fridge and bathroom and the normal walking stuff. But if you, let's say, like if you want to go dancing or something, you know nothing about dancing. I think it's like you have to expand also the capacity of your mind to understand, hey, I can also do this, and this is more. So that's why I think they go back hand in hand in the sense that you can have that aha moment, but if your mind is not expanded in the sense that you believe that it's possible, which is like going to do stuff or then reading about, hey, this somebody else has done this, I might imply these things and it might work for me, I'll give it a try. So I think there's both aspects to that. Or have a different view like we have in CI, like if you jump immediately to the worst case scenario, maybe that's not the thing that was actually happening. Like, right?
What is some aspect of compassionate inquiry that you've like incorporated into your daily life, like outside of a CI session? How has compassionate inquiry impacted the way you just approach your daily life?
Well, it has been a good reminder also of the playfulness. Like to bring it more into, let's say I go out with my dog. I try to smile when I look at the sun or the gray clouds that we're having today, or I look at the trees and I smile. So I think that's kind of like playfulness, like, oh, I like this tree, it looks beautiful, and I just give it a smile, which is giving a smile for myself. So that's what
playfulness is your specialty. I've actually heard some of our peers comment on how playful you are, and it's just wonderful. Playfulness is such a wonderful thing. I want to increase the amount of playfulness in my life for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, like, not in social interactions, playfulness, like outside of that, even like tying my shoes on, like to have a little something, like maybe just smile and giggle a little bit, just for no reason. Right? Yeah, it's just gives more flavor for life. Or if you see somebody who's, not having their best day, you give them a smile. Usually they smile back.
What's occurring to me right now, which I think is really beautiful, is like generally I think that here's where all my offensive comments are going to come in. I don't mean them to be offensive, by the way, but I think that men are generally like more like play is more natural for men than for women. And when I say that, I think that I'm defining play as something that's like doing It's like active doing is play. And what your description is making me think right now is that there is an aspect of playfulness which can be just being.
Kids, for example, like in the playground, boys ruffle and tumble more, right? They play sports, they wrestle with each other, they use fists sometimes, they punch each other, you know, they get into physical fights. And that's in a sense, it is in a sense playfulness taken too far.
Is there an aspect of playful? I mean, all the playful things that you're describing right now are very physical. Is there an aspect of playfulness which is not physical?
Well, I mean, there's verbal playfulness for sure. There's
what is mental playfulness? Just like, how would you describe with your own mind?
Verbal
without verbal. When you're just by yourself and you're taking your dog out for a walk and you're experiencing playfulness in your own mind with yourself, for yourself.
It might be like a joke that I tell for myself, or like because sometimes, so I have some friends and we have this group chat, and we have this thing that we sometimes write each other the worst jokes ever. Like you just get something really, really stupid and just blur it out there. And usually I even warn them like, this is gonna be bad. Like this is gonna be the worst. And that's something that it's created in the mind. You just go out and kind of fun arises in a sense. Or it might be something like instead of feeling ashamed for something like stepping in a puddle of water or something, I just might mentally laugh for myself like, oh, this just happened and now I'm walking with a wet shoe or something.
That is describing it. I'm noticing that there seems to be some aspect of playfulness, which is like the willingness to experience surprise. Because when you think about comedy, like what makes comedy funny is when something surprising happens that you weren't expecting to happen, or you weren't expecting someone to say that out loud. And it's so funny when they do. And I'm thinking about just the like quality of mind to be willing to open up to the possibility of being surprised.
Well, I mean, it's also like challenging yourself to be vulnerable, because that's ultimately the power that we have, to be vulnerable in a place where the social norms might not accept to be vulnerable, and you have to be stoic and tough, where you say like for example, like I give this is a good example. My father, he's a jokester. Like I've inherited some of that, hopefully at least. And I had a conversation. So my father's mother is half Italian, and this cracks me up. So I asked my father, "Does Grandma know Italian? Like, does she speak?" And he's like, "I don't know." It's like, how the fuck you don't know? You're her. And like, I've never heard her speak Italian. She might, but she doesn't speak it to me. Well, it's just like it's like stupid, but it's funny at the same time. And I have to give credit to my father, because he sends sometimes these most ridiculous videos for me. Once he sent me this video where he was doing like he was melting chocolate, and it was in Portuguese, but he gave me the instructions to do banana dipped in chocolate. And he said that it doesn't require any skills. You just take a banana, you peel it, dunk it in the chocolate, and take it out. Voila, you have a chocolate dunked banana. And so humor like that is just funny to me. Like it is thought in the it's so good for me. And that's, I think, what happens if I, instead of getting angry to why was this puddle of water here, or why is it raining so much, I might be having fun with that. Like, oh, look at how wet I am. Look at all these clothes that they are soaking wet from this rain. And it turns into laughter. Or
What advice would you give for someone who has the intention or the wish to develop more playfulness in their life?
I think this is somewhat cliche, but don't take yourself so seriously. Like I have this example. So, a couple of years ago, maybe 5 years ago or something, I was going to a personal training. So I was meeting a client, and I was usually like my late is when I was 5 to the meeting was late for me. I had some issues related to being late, and I was late, quote. So I was 5 minutes early. I was before him, and I was riding on the bus, and my thought went. The bus driver was driving slow in my perception, which was like within the limits of the road at the moment, and I was like, this fucking bus driver, Jesus Christ! I'm sorry, actually, I'm swearing, but this was my thought process.
I don't mind.
I was like, and that was like, I stopped myself. I was like, hey, he's doing his job as he's supposed to do. He's driving with the speed limit. He's not getting anybody killed, and you're angry at him for you being late. Isn't that funny? And I started to laugh so hard in the bus. Everybody was watching me laugh. And I was like, ridiculous. How can I blame somebody to doing the right thing because I'm doing the wrong thing? Doesn't make any sense. and that was just funny to me because it like, why would I blame somebody else for my mistake, even though I wasn't late? But I even texted my client, and he said, you are gonna be before me there, so please don't text me these things, because I sometimes text him, I'm gonna be late, because I was usually like 15 minutes before our meeting there. And if I wasn't, I was texting, hey, I might be late a little bit. And I was always waiting him there.
So what I hear you describing is just to notice how we are creating our own experiences in every moment.
Yeah, and it's like it's theater that we are creating. We are the director and the main actor of our drama, and it can be a comedy if you look at it at that point.
Yeah. What about when the movie that we're watching is like really, there's a lot of suffering in it? Do you think playfulness has a place in the midst of suffering?
Absolutely. I mean,
I guess that's what you just described.
Actually, to experience our own pain liberates us.
Yes.
But I think, like, if we can convert our suffering to pain, all right, it was just a pebble in the shoe. Let's take it out. No problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Still my generation, let's say in our summer house, when if I was a kid and I fell down, the adults were like, hey, all right, get up, no problem.
I'm also thinking, like, not only no problem, but also that experience of having the pebble in the shoe is actually valuable. We can actually gain something from it.
Yeah. And that's like the pain teacher. Like, if it teaches us what we're doing wrong at the moment, right?
Yeah. How has pain been valuable in your life?
In so many ways. Period. You heard the seriousness about my... Well, I talked about my calf in the beginning of our conversation.
Yeah. What about emotional pain? Yeah.
Wow. Still experiencing that though. I think just to distinguish physical pain and emotional pain, for me, it's like emotional pain is everywhere, and you can run from it, or at least I haven't been able to run from it, even though I have tried in many different occasions, in many different ways. But like physical pain, if let's say I have pain in my, if I would have pain in my thumb, it's easy. It's here. I can kind of regulate myself with that. But if it's like emotional pain, like pain of being lonely, it's just everywhere. And there's like the grabbing of the medication to that, not in the physical sense, but more of like, how can I soothe this loneliness and this disconnect do I have to myself via other people?
Yeah, what I hear you describing is like this intensity of wanting to avoid it, like emotional pain. We just want to avoid it so bad.
Yeah, or medicated, which is most of the things that we do. It's like medication is, it doesn't matter.
So that we don't have to experience it.
Yes, or we yeah, that's practically what you said. And I think those are the points where, let's say, I have had several panic attacks in my life, where I haven't been paying attention to myself. I'm not. It has been like my lifestyle has been so that I've been, overworked myself, and it's a roadblock to just, hey, stop, figure what's wrong with your life. And if you just take copy paste and you put it in another scenario in one's life, like let's say in my case, for example, like my first panic attack was, at least what I remember, was 2016. I was working night shift in the local, so Alko is our alcohol dispensary, which is mostly owned by our government, and so it's regulated in a sense. I was working there. I was doing night shifts, and I didn't get along with at that location's boss. She had kind of this her way or the highway kind of approach, whereas my other employers or bosses or the managers of the stores had more of this place where, hey, if you're doing good, you're doing well, I'm not gonna get myself involved with you. If you get praise from the clients, good, I don't have to get involved. So they gave me more freedom. And for me, at least, I felt that she was taking away my freedom. So anyways, so that's when I got my first panic attack. I was like between some carriages with alcohol boxes or like wine boxes. And I just felt like I had to take my shirt off. It was getting so hot inside me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to faint or something. And that was the place where I realized, okay, this is not working. And it's a stop, because that's where you're doing something from the mind and you're trying to push through, force something. And your body says, hey, no, this is not okay. Because panic attack comes from the body. Like the anxiety arises from the body. And it's just like, it's debilitating. So that's one. The next one was I was in my massage therapy school. I was doing personal training. I was partying a lot, doing drugs a lot. And then at some point I was taking my garbage out, and I was also going to school that morning, and I got my second panic attack. And that was just horrible. But it was just something that, that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. And I was just doing too much stuff. And again, from the first one, actually, it was 2015, not 16. It was just copy paste. So I was living too fast for what I was capable of handling. And also there was this freedom aspect. And then I copy paste that, even though I had some days off from the work and everything, I copy paste that. After 2 years or something, I was in the massage therapy school. I was doing personal training. I was getting high off my ass on the weekends and just, mess at the same time, in control of my life, quotes. So I was limiting my freedom of actually choosing to do something different. And also there was a lot of stuff going on back then, and it was just that, and I was just like going really, really bad. And so that was the first time I actually listened to myself, and I was like, okay, something has to stop.
So the panic attack was like a wake-up call.
Yeah, it's like a stop. It's like if you ever had a panic attack or anxiety attack or whatever, you don't have a lot of saying that scenario. Like it's really like it's something else. Like if you haven't experienced it, I highly encourage you to have that experience.
I have experienced panic attacks before. I had them like in my late teen years, and then I went about 15 years without having one, and then I had one again about a month ago, and it was completely surprising. It was surprising because I was like, I didn't know I could still experience this. Like I thought I had kind of, taken out the root of whatever the thing is that like grabs you and leads to a panic attack, but clearly hadn't.
Well, congratulations. That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Right? I mean, again, then this goes into the playful scenario. It's like, it is a gift, even though it comes in a package of.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing. I was reading a book. Whose book? Anyways, the body has, for example, if you eat something bad, you vomit, right? And I've experienced several food poisonings in my life. Not the pleasant thing. Even though it's unpleasant to vomit or have violent diarrhea or have fever or whatever, it's the body's gift for healing.
Yeah. And my panic attack was, I haven't discovered what all the gifts that it's given me yet. I'm still kind of sorting it all through, but it definitely was, I think, indicative or somehow resulting from my insistence on like proving to myself that I can do everything on my own and that I don't have to rely on other people. And I'm a single mom, and I live out in the country where, it's just, life's just not quite as comfortable and easy when you're not in a city with all these services to do everything for you and blah, 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 blah. And I'm trying to find this balance between like being, I guess, self-sufficient or self-reliant, but also not like needing to be self-sufficient, that I can also like receive help and support from others. And I want to ask you about this in relation to the experience of loneliness, because I mean, for me, I can't separate the experience of loneliness from this, and loneliness is something I experience a lot in my life right now. And if we take the assumption that all pain has value, what is the value of loneliness?
Well, finding the connection that serves you, right? I mean, put it simply, right? And I think that's what you said earlier. I'm hearing, again, going back to I've even written it down here, the word forceful. It's funny, I have a small piece of paper here that just says forceful.
I'm trying to get the forceful quality of my mind out of my mind because it causes me all kinds of problems.
Well, again, what does it want to what does it want to say or tell? There's a reason for that. It is an invitation to find the insight, and then with the insight comes an honest look in one's life, which is like, oh, is this surrounding or is this environment actually serving me? And it doesn't have to be physical environment. It's like it might be a mental space, or you might have your dinner table in front of the door, which doesn't serve if you want to go out the door. Like, obviously that's a stupid example, but it's like if your immediate environment or your mental space or your workspace or your whatever doesn't serve you, it is also an opportunity to watch that or to assess that. And then what are new values on that? Because at least for me, the panic attacks were a place where the values that I was living, or the non-existence of values that I was living with, didn't serve me anymore. So I think, like, you don't have to know the whole way, but in darkness, a flashlight or a torch is very good, right? And values are something that lights the way. Like, you know that, oh, this road doesn't take me quite far, but now you have the light, you can see, okay, I can see that this road, and the light is the metaphor of values. I can see that this road ends badly, and these are not my values of doing things like this. What are my new values? And obviously you have to reassess your values at some point, consciously. Because if you just don't live with values, it's like drifting in the ocean without a sail. So I think that's the thing. And then to integrate those values into habits and practice.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about how over the last 2 years, there have been several like really big changes in my life that had me reflecting on values as it relates to like my relationships with other people. And I spent a lot of time getting really clear with myself about the types of relationships, for example, at work or with friends or spiritual communities, all different types of relationships, family, anything, the types of relationships that I didn't want to be in, that felt unhealthy. And I got really clear about that. I got really clear about what I didn't want. But I don't think I really spent much time getting clear about what kind of relationships I do want in my life and how I can foster those. So that's probably what I should do now.
Yeah, I think, like, I think you need both, in the sense that you have to know what's your nightmare, but also what's your dream. Because if you just know what's your nightmare, you're just avoiding something. Because also there might be something valuable.
Yes, and I think that the last 2 years that I've, a significant amount of it has been spent like by myself, with myself, inquiring into myself. There's been tremendous value in that. And I don't think I've totally been able to put my finger on the value of being alone, actually, because I think there's value in that too. I don't think we have to be connected to others all the time.
There's both ways, but then, like, being lonely and loneliness, those are two different things. You can be in a crowded place lonely.
True.
Or experience loneliness, and you can be, like, for example, well, obviously I'm talking to you and I have a dog, but I don't have a human companion here in my apartment. So I'm kind of alone. It doesn't matter. Like, I can call a friend, hey, would you come over tomorrow and let's eat something or whatever. And that's connection. But that's like, I think we are, like, in our animal core, we need tribe, we need clan, we need like people around us. Not all the time. Like, oof, that will get annoying if there's somebody all the time there. Please go out, away from my face at some point. but to have that, and I think goes into trust, and I think, and this connects to the blame thing, is like, I just want to put this here. So I think blame is broken trust also. Like, if it's in the healthy way, that somebody promises something and they don't deliver that promise, then there could be blame, in a sense that, hey, you promised something, you didn't fall through, or you didn't fulfill that promise, and that's healthy blame. But if I blame you for, if you don't answer to my question how I want to you answer to my question, the fault is not in you. But again, it's the loneliness is it's an interesting thing, or lack of connection, because we need that connection.
Yeah, I so agree that we need it. I think it's like one of the most fundamental, just a word, like basis for life. And I don't know if this is just because I'm projecting my own experience onto the world and my experience is a lonely one, but it feels like the world as a whole is very lonely right now and very disconnected. Is that your perception too, or it's just a lonely person's perspective?
No, I perceive, with all the political shenaniganry going on in the world, I think we are in living a time of separation, which is important also because through that we like as a child you grow up and to be an adult and you leave your parents' house, like the house you grew up in, for example. That's healthy, right? I at least I perceive so. I mean, somebody could argue otherwise, but I think it's healthy for a child to leave their immediate and childhood environment at some point. Go travel, whatever, move to another city. It's like birds, flock out their nest. So I perceive that to be healthy, but I think we are living in a place where we are in a time space that we are kind of finding our new values on things. And we are just like, this was something that I got from ayahuasca as well, was that we are rewriting our contracts, quote, in a sense that it's like we need that separation to understand and to get that pain of separation, to actually go forward. Oh, we don't want that. I want this. And then to go towards that unapologetically, obviously not to hurt nobody or like not in the expense of another person, but as in like, I want to, let's say I would like to be a fireman, and then I would go towards that, and that's my purpose, and I pursue my purpose with perseverance, so that I'm single-minded to go that direction, whatever that is for individual, as it has to be a fireman, but it could be something else. But it's like, oh, I want a loving relationship, I want loving community surrounding me, and then how can I contribute to build that? Because it's not like, oh, I want something, and well, I'm not going to lift my finger to make it happen. So chances are it's not going to happen if you just wait and pray for that. I mean, I haven't found the power of prayer in that sense. So I mean, or my prayers to that hasn't still been answered. So I have to try something else.
Yeah, and even like the act of trying and taking action it's like it's like believing in yourself, showing up for yourself, I think were some words you used earlier.
Yeah, and I think it's faith, like not in the religious way, faith, but that something's out there, and you go for that, and that's faith. Like in its essence, it's not like, oh, there's a bearded man in the sky, or there's somebody else meditating under a Bodhi tree or whatever. It's just, I have faith that this works.
What are you going for in life, Aslak?
Oh, good question.
That's my last question.
Yeah. Well, I find myself in a crossroad at the moment, in the sense that how do I keep myself living, helping other people, so that because like therapy work is hard, in the sense that, again, I think why it's hard for me, and this might be like a limiting belief for myself, is like change is hard. I know for a fact for myself, change is ridiculously hard. Like in the sense that it's not hard, it's just laborious. It's not hard because it's like tying shoes is not hard. It's just like it's laborious in a sense. And I found like my marketing is not the best. So I've come to realize that things that are calling me at the moment are something that I'm not good at. So where I'm going in life is somewhere where I'm good, where I have space to grow, and where I can help people at the same time. People help themselves. So it's not like I help them. Hey, this is the bold God here talking, and I'm gonna help you. No, it's more like I have this thing, and I'm working on it, and you come to me to help yourself. I'm just here providing the service of helping you. And I think if we would adapt that mindset, like even if I think I'm not sure if I've mentioned this before for you, but it's like you don't have to become a dentist to do dental work, right? You can go to the dentist, and that's where community comes in and using a service. But you are going to the dentist, so I'm taking the steps towards the dentist who is doing the dental work. I don't have to go 4 years to school to fix a cavity or something. I can get that service to help myself. I don't have to be alone, and it's a trade-off. I give you money, you give me a service. That's it.
I'm very inspired by your description of the place where I'm going is a place where I'm not good. It resonates with me a lot, and I am struck by how much courage it takes to do that. And I'm inspired by your courage.
Well, thank you. I'm afraid of my courage. It's and it's interesting, not to go too much into it, but it's interesting to see how, like, I'm not sure that I'm not crazy or anything, but I sometimes perceive things a little bit before they happen. And this is something that I've been perceiving for maybe half a year now. Every time somebody asks me, not with those words, but the same question that what are you going to do in your life? And I have to probably do something new. And I'm like dreaded by that life, like, wow. And it feels like just when I accomplish something that I get to the point of, hey, I think I'm really good at this. I think I can do this. And then it's like, guess again, dude.
I can't wait to see what comes next for you.
Yeah, right.
It sounds like a fun ride.
Yeah, well.
So is there anywhere, if someone is wanting to contact you and make use of your services
Sure.
as a dentist, which you are not, where can people find you and find more about your services?
So I'm in Instagram at State of Wholeness. That's my page. I've been poorly updating that, but maybe this inspires me to do more updates. I think I have a lot of stuff, but it's on the metaphysical level, and I would just have to go in and just speak my things.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear them and see them. Thank you for taking this time today.
Yeah, thank you.